This episode contains references to drug use, abuse, and sexual abuse.
Okay, Jules, would you remember, what's your last memory before going into prison?
My last memory that sticks in my head would be saying bye to my 3 best friends.
Ah.
It was pretty sad. What's your last memory?
Going to court and just, the courtroom. Be sitting in the court cell. Yeah, just like, okay, prison time now.
Hi, I'm Jules.
And I'm Zach, and this is Life After Prison, The Sit Down, a brand new podcast from National Prison Radio where we open up the discussion about life after prison.
In every episode, we talk to incredible people whose lives have been affected by the criminal justice system. So today in the studio, we have Chris, who is a poet, a writer, and a public speaker. So hi, Chris.
Hi, guys. Thanks for having me.
How you doing?
Good, thank you. Very, very happy to be here.
Good. Thank you for joining us.
You're welcome.
Yeah, it's a pleasure, man. I really like your energy.
Thanks.
Really do. So, thanks for being here today. We're going to get straight into it.
Sure.
So tell us about yourself and a bit about what you do, please.
A bit about what? So my name is Chris. I'm originally from Ireland. I moved here in 2014 and I work for a homeless charity in Sheffield. I'm a poet. I write social media and blog content for our charity. And I just try and raise awareness of issues that are important to me, mental health, addiction, and try and keep these things in the public sphere.
So you've spent time inside prison yourself.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about your journey? Talk us through it a little bit.
Sure. It depends on how in-depth you want me to go.
Wherever you want to go with
it. The floor is yours.
Right. I suppose we could all just sit here and talk about we went to prison for this and that. And I suppose what I try to do with my story is to highlight the greys that exist between the black and whites. We all work in a binary world of black and white and right and wrong, and we never really see the socio-economic reasons that lead people into incarceration in the first place.
The so-called bigger picture, right?
Yes. And my story was very familiar to lots of men that I met inside, and it's not a story that men are familiar to speaking about. I had an abusive childhood. I was physically and sexually abused for quite a long time. And that coloured my life, still does to this day. I also had military service, coupled on top of that. Military service with an already troubled young mind was like a match to gunpowder. So the story got even more familiar. I left the military with PTSD and my previous traumas. And drugs and alcohol became my way of coping. And drugs and alcohol were my way of coping until they were no longer a way of coping. Until they got the better of me. I held down jobs like a lot of addicts do. Bounced around from relationship to relationship to job, got involved in criminality, mainly at the beginning dealing to feed my addiction. But when you're involved in that life itself can also be quite addictive. You know, you're part of a subculture and it's about respect and honour and trust. Well, at least you think that when you start initially. Like many drug dealers, I quickly became my own best customer. And that graduated pretty quickly. I used to think I had a handle on things because, hey, it's just a bit of coke or it's just some ease, or it's just a joint, whatever. And I was in a long-term relationship for a long time, for 8 years. And my relationship broke up. So I moved to a different town, about 15 miles away from where I was living. And I'd had a difficult life, I'd lost a lot. And I just lost my family. And I was chilling with this guy called Paul. He was my friend. Been chilling with him for a while, and he was in my living room. And I just got the phone call from my ex to say that I wouldn't be seeing my kids again. And I literally turned around to this guy and I said, you know what, man? I've screwed everything up. I might as well try heroin. I literally said that. I didn't realize that Paul was a heroin addict. When I said that, he stood up in my living room. He put his hand in his pocket. He pulled out a bag of gear. And he said, look what I have. I'd already said it then. I didn't know if I'd really meant it or if it was just a throwaway comment from someone who just felt like they had nothing to lose. But I mean, I'd already written the check at that point.
It's a nice time to cash it, right?
Nice time to cash it when you got nothing else to lose, you know. That's a really great way of saying it. And within 10 minutes, we were upstairs smoking. So I smoked it every day for a couple of weeks. Then about 7-8 weeks later, Paul didn't turn up to my house one morning and I was feeling really ill. My stomach was turning, my nose was running, I had the jitters and I didn't know what the hell was wrong with me. And Paul came back to the house a couple of hours later and I explained how I was feeling to him and he said, "Chris, you're rattling." Obviously, withdrawing from heroin. I didn't realize what that was. And he said, "Don't worry, I'll fix this up, but I've only got a single bag. And I've only got a pin, which is a needle."
Mm.
And I said, "Are we not supposed to use clean needles and stuff?" "Chris, I'm your friend. I'm not going to hurt you." Paul had Hep C. And the first time I ever used a needle with another human being, I caught Hep C from them.
Wow.
Yeah.
Madness.
Madness. So that was my foray into drugs.
Mm-hmm.
And it got worse.
So from the drugs now, was that the gateway into like criminal behavior then?
Yes. Especially the class A's.
How quickly into you taking drugs was it?
I've always been a drug taker.
Okay.
When I was about 12, 13, I've already alluded to the fact that I was abused at home and smoking dope and hash and weed and acid was an escape for me.
Yeah.
I was very immature. I was a child. I was 12 or 13, but I would take that stuff and I would just feel nothing. You know, and sometimes feeling nothing is better than feeling good.
Wow.
And sometimes feeling good is better than feeling nothing. But at least you've got control.
No, that's a heavy statement there, man.
I mean, you know, you've said a lot of things that are traumatic for your childhood. So, you know, those things led you to taking drugs. And yeah, you said quite a lot, you know.
Yeah.
So how did that lead you into actually going to prison?
Okay, so Paul got involved with dealing drugs, and then I got involved with dealing drugs. We got in trouble. Somebody came to my home and pretty much tortured me for quite a while. So I fled. And I did what a lot of Irish men do when I got on the boat to the UK. So I landed here in 2014, withdrawing from heroin, traumatized, confused, lonely, mentally ill. And I got involved with some people who I thought were my friends. You know, I was only recently diagnosed with autism 2 years ago. And I don't really suffer I'm quite high functioning. But sometimes I don't see the tigers for the cats.
Okay.
You know, if somebody comes to me friendly and at face value, I'll take them at face value. So I got involved with this gang of drug dealers, basically, and I had no idea you could inject amphetamines. But I found out pretty quickly. Amphetamine isn't really big in culture in Ireland. And I found out it was quite big in the culture over here. And it's such a cheap drug. It's £5 for a gram. And of course, I was injecting. I've never experienced being awake for 6 or 7 days before.
Wow.
But that was insanity. Being awake for a week or two is so detrimental to your mental health. I started to see and hear things that weren't real. I was out committing burglaries, commercial burglaries. This gang would tell me of a place where there was good swag to be had, and I would go, I would steal it, and I would bring it back to the boss. And he would give me £2 cash and enough drugs inside a syringe to get me going for another couple of hours. And then I'd be sent back out to steal some more. And I don't want to say I was a modern slave, but I was definitely exploited and I was working for free. I'd never experienced gaslighting, right? To me, if somebody had a problem with me, they'd come and shout at me or throw a punch. But for people to start messing with your head just to keep you weak. So I let these people move into my home, thinking they were my friends. And pretty soon, their tactics and what they were doing got worse and worse. And eventually, I would sleep down the canal because I didn't feel safe in my own home. It's only pretty recently that I found out what those people did to me was deliberate, and there's actually a word for it, and it's called cuckooing. And it's seen frequently in the county lines drug operations where gangs will go and take the home of a vulnerable person and use it for criminal ends, and that's what happened to me. I tried to report this, but I was told I let them into my house. So the only place I really felt safe was out on jobs. So I would break into a place and climb upstairs into the attic and sleep in a disused or abandoned building. I was arrested here and there by the police, never really listened. They'd arrest me, put me into the cell for a couple of days, and I'd just run straight back out to the same people and go using again. My behaviour became more and more reckless as my mental state deteriorated. Awake for days and getting iller and iller with the hep C that was raging through my body. Yeah.
So at this moment that you haven't had any treatment?
Nothing.
Were you even diagnosed with it?
I was diagnosed.
Okay, cool.
I was given treatment, and those people, this gang, they said they would be my carers.
Okay.
That was my first mistake. They didn't give me my meds because it suited them. I was making them thousands of pounds a week. Thousands of pounds a week. It's very difficult to talk about this now as a man. The shame you feel for allowing that to happen to yourself. As a man, that is hard to deal with more than anything, Like, fair enough, I might have been victimized by those people, and I just always try to make my point when I'm doing stuff like this that I deserved every single second of the time I served. I really did. I might have been better served in rehab, but I did. So I got arrested for a couple of commercial burglaries. Excuse me. And I got sent to prison for 30 days. It obviously wasn't enough for me because I got released after my first ever time in prison, 30 days, and I went straight back to the dealers. I've been through some difficult things in my life. Psychosis is probably the scariest thing I've ever experienced. I've hallucinated on most drugs, Psychosis is so real. My psychosis was triggered by drugs, but even 2 years later, I was in the gym, I was running every day, lifting weights. The TV and the radio were still giving me messages.
Wow.
People's tattoos, people's clothes, all about me. Terrifying.
Wow. So you done one stint in prison.
Yes.
What led to your longer stint then?
So like I said, I just went and scored drugs and I went back to the bail hostel. I was convinced I was Truman in The Truman Show, if anybody has ever seen that program before.
Jim Carrey.
Yes.
Yeah.
I was Truman. I missed my mum. I didn't have any friends. I was alone and I was ill and I was homesick. I was high. I went down to the cellar and there was benefits letters strewn across the ground. And of course, benefits meant money. So the delusion told me that this is what you have to do to get money. And then I went further into the cellar and almost like it was a studio, there was this big, huge circuit board lit up by lights and it looked like special effects in my delusional and psychotic mind. Mm. So I went upstairs and got a hacksaw I'd bought earlier in the day and I found a candle in the house. And my intention was to steal some scrap metal, just enough to get me a ferry home. I wasn't thinking straight, I wasn't acting straight. And going to the cellar, I used the hacksaw to cut a pipe. I had no light source, so I had to use the candle I found as a light source. So I lit the candle and I held it up to the pipe. And I used the hacksaw to start cutting what I thought was water. It was gas. So the gas escaped, hit the flame, a 6-foot blue jet of flame engulfed my face, burned my eyebrows, burned my eyelashes, burned my hair.
So why was you cutting the...
To steal the scrap metal, to steal the copper piping.
Okay,
yeah.
So...
There was gas within it though.
Right.
You're thinking it's a water pipe.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
Turns out to be gas.
Yeah.
So completely not knowing...
Obviously.
Completely not knowing.
Yeah,
so,
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, then flame.
The whole place went up. I ran. I got maybe 15 yards and went, there's people in there. So I turned around. I ran back into the building and I ran to the 3rd floor and all the way down. And if nobody answered the door, I would kick them open and scream, get out, get out, get out.
How did you know there was people in there?
I didn't. I knew there was people up in the top ones, but some of the ones that I didn't know if they were occupied or not, but I couldn't take the risk of somebody
So
sleeping.
something
so I
just made you run back.
I had to check there was no one in that house. So I started kicking open doors and making sure everybody got out. But then I got scared. I found myself in the bathroom trying to think as the entire house is filling up with smoke. Then I turned to leave and the bathroom door broke off in my hand.
Oh.
Psychosis saved my life here. A month before in prison, I was watching a movie called The Kinsman.
Yeah.
And in the movie, the main character is trained to be a spy. And one of the training exercises he goes through is he's locked underwater in a bathroom. And in the movie, the character rips a pipe off the wall and he sticks it down the toilet so he can breathe. Now, in prison, everything was about me, the radio, the TV, and I used to watch it intently for clues. And instantly, trapped in that bathroom with the smoke rising up, it came to me. Kingsman. I ripped the pipe off the wall, I shoved it down the toilet, and it saved my life. And that's where
does it actually work? Yeah?
And that's where the fire brigade found me 10 minutes later.
Wow.
Yeah. I heard a scream then, just before they broke the door down. I heard glass smashing, and I was still thinking that maybe this is all like not real or a game. And I heard a woman scream out on the road. I heard somebody say he's still in there about me. And it was the most blood-curdling scream of terror I've ever felt and heard. And I knew right away.
You knew.
This is real.
Okay. That's when it was back to reality.
This is real. What have I done?
Oh no. Okay, what happened next?
I fled. They brought me to hospital. I had really bad smoke inhalation, mentally ill, and I just left and tried to go back to the property. And there I was arrested and sent to prison, and I got 3 years, 9 months total.
So what was prison like for you then?
Culture shock. I was 32 years of age when I went to prison for the first time. It's not unusual. Lots of people have had more experience than me of prison. You know, lots of the lads have been in and out before. And I'm quite lucky that I'd had some military service. But I was convinced that everybody in that prison was an actor. Utterly convinced.
So when did you go to the army? When did you serve?
When I was 17, I joined the Navy.
Okay. How long was that for?
4 years.
Okay. So quite a while after.
Yeah.
Now you're in prison. But
yeah. But I was always, prison was easy.
It gave you some sort of resilience in.
Do what you're told. They tell you what to do. It was easy. Like, it's a horrible place, but I needed it.
What were your challenges in prison then?
Mental illness. I think the reason why people left me alone in prison is because I was obviously not well. I was walking into guys' cells and asking them to move off their bed so I could look for clues. Yeah. And these guys were like, what the heck is up with this guy? I think they were a bit wary because when someone's that ill, you're genuinely unsure what they're going to do. And I'm quite lucky that it saved me a lot there, you know?
Kind of gives you a bit of a blind, people like the other inmates will turn a little blind eye.
Yes.
To you.
Come on, he's just a mad lad. He's just crazy. Leave him, you know? And because I don't know why people liked Irish people up, and I don't know. It was everywhere I went, it was fist bumps, hey Irish. And yeah, it wasn't a nice experience. And I was in HMP Marshgate for about 5 months. And when I got my charges through for the arson, yeah, that was difficult. They were going to charge me with arson with intent to endanger life. And when the paperwork hit my cell, they said 25 to life.
Because of the intent, right?
Because of the intent.
Because people were still inside the building.
Yes. Luckily, mercifully and thankfully, I spoke to a psychologist who assessed me for the courts. And he agreed that I had genuine psychosis. So I was very lucky that the charge was dropped to a reckless arson and lowered from 25 to life to 3 years. And 9 months then for the other charges on top of it.
And that's the longest you did and
Yeah.
the most you did.
Yes.
Do you, so we've touched on trauma. Do you think there's a correlation between people having gone through trauma and going to prison?
I heard a statistic that said that 80% of men in prison have a personality disorder. I was diagnosed with one a couple of years ago, BPD, and it's very common amongst men or anyone who've been abused and mistreated.
What is BPD?
Borderline personality disorder.
Okay.
It's a pattern of behaviour, emotional dysregulation, inability to maintain proper relationships, negative self-image, And it can be very pervasive and destructive to people's relationships and lives in the future if it's not taken control of.
Well, yeah, we speak to quite a few people about, you know, these kind of relationships between connections between trauma or abuse and going into prison, and, you know, seeing if prison is going to destruct people or help people. So, you know, it's
yeah. I found a prison system that was bursting at the seams, right? I found a prison system with a lot of problems. I found one that was not fit for purpose. I have to be honest. Prison officers treated me with more respect and dignity than anybody had ever been treated up until that point in this country.
Wow.
Prison officers treated me with more respect than the people I was associating with for years.
And how did that then affect your behavior going forward, or affect your experience going forward?
They seen me. I hated myself. I felt shame. I felt disgust about the things that I did. But these people seen me for me. And if they could start to see the good in me in a place like that with their role and my position, well, then surely I could try and start to bridge that gap and try and start to see myself in a positive light too.
Oh, wow. So it's the police officers, the prison officers that...
Yes.
Would you say that was what your spark was to
Completely.
kind of make change?
It was several things. It was excuse me. I'd been an atheist before I went to prison. I don't know what I am now, but I believe in something.
Yeah.
And I was mentally ill and I was looking for some meaning, and it was actually a prison chaplain that changed everything.
Wow.
Every single thing.
When they first approached you, what was your initial thought?
I was looking to attend the Buddhist service, just for some meditation, just for some chill, to get off the wing, just for quiet in prison is the most valuable resource you can ever get.
Yeah.
And I loved being in the chapel. Silence. In a prison. Wow. So I became the chapel orderly there.
So was I.
Really?
Yeah.
It's a fantastic job.
It's a great job. It's cushy, man.
I got to speak to the imams, the rabbis, the Sikhs. I was hungry for knowledge, and all these learned religious people were giving me their different...
And they, you know what? It's like you're not in prison, right?
Exactly.
Because there, it's like you're not an inmate. They see you as a human being.
Yes, that's exactly it.
Yeah.
That's exactly it.
Did you meet a lot of people in prison that you built a good relationship with? Did you actually meet any people that have been to the army as well?
Yes, actually many. I was in a veterans in custody group.
Okay.
So there was so many of us in our prison that we all joined a group, and we would meet every Wednesday for coffee and stuff and tea and biscuits.
Oh, wow.
And they did at one point put us all into the same wing. But then security took umbrage with it and had an issue because they didn't want to have
a load of veterans
on one wing in case there was a rising or something, which kind of makes a bit of sense,
because of the training and...
Absolutely. But I mean, we're prisoners. What are we going to do? But so it was actually the prison chaplain that changed everything. He approached me one day and I was ready to swing at this guy, man. He said to me, "You don't realize how lucky you are." Lucky? Who the hell do you think you are? Lucky? I'm in prison. And he went, "Stop for a second." He said, "Listen," he goes, "only two type of people spend life in a cell. A prisoner and a monk." And then he told me I had a choice in which I wanted to be. Light bulb. It was like an epiphany. It was like a moment of enlightenment. You know, I'd struggled and suffered and been put through stuff by lots of people most of my life. And here I was at the end of my road for punishment. And I felt a surge of righteous anger going through me. And I said, "You're going to give me this to punish me? Watch. I'm going to use this to build myself." I quit drugs instantly. I even handed back my psychiatric meds. I stopped taking part in the prison economy. I was at the gym every single day, church every single day. I became a listener in prison, a Samaritans listener. And then I did something that changed everything. I took part in something called the Shannon Trust.
You know Shannon Trust, right?
I've definitely heard, we've definitely heard of Shannon Trust and Turning Pages. Yeah. So now that's incredible.
Yeah, so now you've got this light bulb moment.
Did that happen in one day, the light bulb moment?
No, it was over the space of a couple of weeks.
Right.
So it was a couple of weeks after the light bulb moment.
Turning on.
Yeah. I started to try and see the forest for the trees and started trying to do... There's not a lot of positivity in prison. There's not a lot in prison. But what is there, if you don't grab it with both hands, then you're not going to really get much else. So I tried to grab whatever I could with both hands. I tried to be some light in a dark place, if that makes sense. I was just me. I wasn't going to let that place turn me. I wasn't going to start, being a prisoner. I wasn't going to attack people or fight people. I was just going to hug people and fist bump people. And that got me through it, and the amount of respect I got from other prisoners, I could walk onto wings and Irish people would come over and hug me because I'd done maybe, an anecdote I will share with you is me sitting in a prison library. 2 guys in grey tracksuits, right? Both in for serious violent offences, all right? One man is 40 years of age. I was in my early 30s. And he stands up and he's crying and he puts his arm around me and gives me the most tight hug I've ever got in my life because he's 40 and for the first time in his life, he's read the first few words of a kid's book.
Oh,
Wow.
I can't cope. That is amazing.
Now, what a ray of sunshine in a place of darkness.
Yeah.
Honestly. So then I started writing for the prison newsletter and the newspaper, and through the abuse of my youth, I've always been hyperlexic. I've always been reading at a level that was much more than my age. So All Quiet on the Western Front was one of my favourite books when I was 7 and 8.
Whoa,
and I would
that's a deep book.
It's a deep book, yeah. But it's about courage and overcoming adversity and just living through terror and horror. And it spoke to me, and I've always loved writing and writing stories of escapism and heroism. And I started writing for the prison newspaper, talking about war stories, basically, from addiction, things I did, things I wasn't proud of. And the editor approached me just before I left and he said, if you do not write when you leave this place, what a waste that will be.
Wow.
Yeah.
Where do you think this you've got some inner strength to even, yes, it was a light bulb moment and you had that around you to create the light bulb moment, but that was effectively all you.
Yeah.
So I just want to understand why that's always been in you, but you found it in a time of prison. And do you think there's any other reason why it was then that you found that, and you didn't before you went in, or even when you just got into prison, were you still taking drugs then? Okay.
I was. I was taking drugs in prison for the first couple of months. How the drug spice was legal in this country, I have absolutely no idea. 3 or 4 pulls on a joint of spice and you're gone. You're on the ground. Anyone can do anything they want to you. So that was a great escape for me. And I suppose resilience, and we don't actually know how resilient we are.
Until you're in that situation, right?
We always say, I've had enough. I can't take anymore. I can't take anymore. I can't take anymore. And there's many different rock bottoms. You know what? The best thing that happened to me was going to prison with no visitors, no friends, no family, no nothing. It was just me. If I didn't do something to save myself, then I wasn't going to be saved. It was the point of no return. It was the lowest of the low. And it was time to build myself back up.
So how long have you been out for now?
I got released in the summer of 2017 and I've never looked back.
Do you remember what it felt like coming out of prison?
Yeah, terrifying. I was still expecting my psychosis to kick off the moment I left the gate, and it didn't. It was silent. And actually, prison staff picked me up. They don't do stuff like this for anybody in prison, They picked me up. They gave me some money. They put me up for a week in a hotel. They actually got me the job that I'm still in today.
Is it?
I'm still in this job I'm in today, senior member of staff, because those staff members in prison seen something in me and took a risk. They put their careers on the line. And I'm so grateful to those staff.
Tell us about the job.
So I work for a homeless charity in Sheffield called Printed by Us. And I work creating blogs, social media content for the charity. I also am involved in our micro business called Printed by Us. We're an award-winning social enterprise and we use ethically sustained and manufactured processes to make garments and artworks. And we sell these in our stores and online. But where it's different is every single one of our staff members has some vulnerability. We have people, tragically ladies who are trafficked into the sex trade. We have prison leavers, people who've been homeless, people with mental health and addictions. And we keep each other strong. We have an office with desks and stuff, and we've got our own team. And we all get it. And we all keep each other strong. And it's a cliche to say that, you know, a job is your family, but they are literally family. We go to each other's kids' birthday parties and stuff. And, yeah, it's just an amazing place to work.
So you've, you know, on your journey from being released from prison, you know, you've seen the light bulb moment. You're now determined to completely change your life. You've got this incredible job. Did you carry on writing?
Yes. So I have a social media channel called Words from the Shed. I'm on pretty much all platforms. I've got tens of thousands of views. I write beat poetry. So I write about mental health and addiction. I don't write happy poems. They're all sad or they might elicit anger in you, you know. Next month, I'm actually delivering a lecture at the University of Sheffield where... Ironically, I'm going to be lecturing on drugs, crime and police policy.
Oh, wow.
Okay, Professor Chris.
I know, it's crazy,
Chris,
right?
I like it.
It's crazy.
That's great.
Thank you. I also write a regular blog for South Yorkshire Police and the Violence Reduction Unit. That was an amazing opportunity they gave me, and I tried to give an offender's perspective on criminal justice.
And this blog, how does it work then?
So I'm pretty much free. I don't have to follow any guidelines. As long as it's related to my experiences of criminal justice and the things I've gone through, and it's not too critical, the police actually allow me to say whatever I want.
Okay.
To see my picture and name alongside the police and crime commissioner, the irony is not lost on me, and I'm very grateful.
Do you feel? Does it feel weird? Do you feel a type of way working like with the police? How does that? Yeah.
Very, 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 very. So that's all I'm saying.
Great question, great answer. Absolutely love it. Is it weird? Yes.
Yes, it is very weird.
Okay.
It is.
But you have literally changed the whole aspect of your life.
The script.
Completely around. So is there was no way of looking back into drugs or like that kind of feeling of your life? And what can you describe the feeling of what it was like before you went into prison and the feeling you feel today?
I'm free. I was free before prison, but I was a slave. I was a slave to myself and to substances. You know, now I'm free. Now I'm truly free.
Are you happy?
Very, very. Do you know what? No. Who's truly happy all the time? I am a normal person. Some days I'm happy, some days I'm sad. And you know what?
Love that.
There is a legacy. No, and it's truth.
Yeah.
I'm happy. Yeah. There's a legacy. I'm still in therapy to this day. A couple of weeks ago, I was diagnosed with a heart condition. They told me I've got a serious heart condition. I'm 39 years old. This is from mistreating myself, but mainly from living a life of toxic stress. I wrote an article for the police recently called Adverse Childhood Experiences. These are a set of questions that psychologists use to determine how much damage toxic stress has done to you, and I scored a 7. What was scary to read was people like me can take 20 years off their life expectancy just by living in stress.
Whoa.
Just from toxic stress. So I've had to grip myself in the last couple of weeks and try and get my lifestyle, you know, a bit better and eat healthy. Yeah.
Can you redeem those years back?
I think so. You
Good.
know, I think so.
I love that mindset.
So you're in therapy now currently, right?
Yeah.
So is that to help you with your mental health issues?
Yes. So I've taken part in, you know what? Something that's very close to my heart is men think that it's weak to be vulnerable. Something really sad is every 2 hours, and so by the time you've watched this show, probably another man will have taken his life. Every 2 hours in this country, a man commits suicide because we don't talk. We drink or have a sniff or end up in jail. I think there's strength in vulnerability.
100%.
I really do.
100%.
I really do. I think we live in a very judgmental society, and somebody asked me, what would I change? Absolutely nothing. Nothing. You know, I had to go through the things I went through to try and make people see the grey. I went through what I went through so I can tell people. You know, we see somebody homeless on drink, on drugs, out on the streets of London, smashing stuff up, you know, and just displaying behaviours that we just find illogical, you know. We always go, what the hell is wrong with you? Or why are you doing that? You know, really angrily, it bothers us. We need to quit. And we need to look that person in the eye, and say, what happened to you? Because everyone's got a story.
Yeah.
Thank you for saying that. And
you touched on, you know, sorry, Jules, but you touched on like, you know, drugs and alcohol.
Yeah.
Do you get support for that now?
No.
Okay.
No. I have been clean for 7 years and sober for 5.
Well done.
Well done, man.
I'm well over that. I can go to a pub and have a meal.
No, let's do that.
Thank you.
Well done.
Thank you. No, I'm well. That's well and truly done with that.
So, Chris, if people are listening and they want to hear about your writing, your poetry, how can they listen? How can they hear?
Excuse the pun, but I'm an open book. So I try and use my experiences to help others now going forward. And my social media, Words from the Shed, it's literally just a dude in his shed, me. And I'm on Instagram, Facebook especially, Twitter, pretty much everything. All my poetry, every interview I've done, the police blogs, everything, every facet of my life, and the workshops that I run, the creative writing workshops, they're all on my social media. Words from the Shed. Encourage you all to check it out.
Words from the Shed. Check it out.
Yeah.
That'll be in the description and the show notes. So.
Yeah, as well.
Yeah. So I wanted to just, round off here with a bit of advice from yourself, because what I want to know, what would you say to someone who's listening to this, who's just been released from prison? What would you say to them?
Don't go back. I know that's an easy thing to say, all right? But you being in there doesn't help anybody. They win, all right? The people listening to this right now, we probably deserved what we did, but you were failed too. Somewhere along the line, somebody failed you. Nobody wants to end up in prison. Who the heck wants to end up in prison? Like an alcoholic or on drugs. We are creations. We are creations, and we often judge the adults but fail to see the kids beneath. That's what I would say.
Thank you, Chris.
That was proper poignant and poetic.
Were you ready for that?
Thanks.
No.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, man. I wanted to ask you, were there any organizations that really supported you when you came out of prison?
Yes, the organization that I work for. My boss, he is also our support worker. We are very unique. As part of my job, we were giving a bespoke health and well-being program, yoga, free counselling. So this has helped my support immeasurably going forward.
Tell us the organisation's name.
The Archer Project. The Archer Project in Sheffield, the homeless charity that I've been working for happily for the last 5 years.
Thanks for that, Chris. That's really helpful.
Yeah, thank you.
Helpful. Thank you. There are other organisations that can support you if you are in recovery, such as Humankind and Turning Point. There's also Survivors UK, who help men overcome their sexual violence and sexual abuse. There's also SAFA, SSAFA, a charity that supports veterans.
Yeah, and if anything you have heard in this interview has affected you and you need somebody to talk to, you can contact CALM or the Samaritans. Samaritans do have a helpline, which is 116 123. And all the organisations mentioned in today's podcast will be in the show notes. So have a look for them there.
Yeah, and please check out our other show, Getting Out, where we've got support information for people who have just been released from prison, and you could find something useful there.
So we would love to know what you thought about this episode, and if listening to this or any of our other shows has inspired you to get some support, then please do. You can contact us on Twitter and Instagram. Our DM is @AfterPrisonPod, or you can email us at podcasts@prison.radio, or if you would like to write to us instead, you can at Life After Prison, National Prison Radio, HMP Brixton, London, SW2 5XF.
Yes. Thank you, Chris, for being here and speaking so openly and honestly with us.
Yes,
problem.
thank you a lot.
Really appreciate it. I think it's really powerful as well.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening and watching. If you've enjoyed the show, please like, share and subscribe. It really helps us get the podcast out there to people who really need to hear it.